So before I even talk about the movie, I gotta mention something. Eating popcorn. Alright, there are some movies you eat popcorn for, there are some you don't. This is one of them. A Quiet Place. You know, it's in the title already. If you saw the first film, you know it's a bad idea. I'm pretty sure I bought popcorn for the first Quiet Place. And I just felt like a douchebag, you know, rustling the bag, crunching. You know, that film was basically a silent movie. And whilst this movie is louder, don't eat popcorn. You know, I had some people over to my left hand side, and the whole movie, all I'm hearing is this. It's like they were just trying to open the bag the whole time, and the thing is, like, just open the bag. It's like ripping off a band-aid, you know, don't dick about, you know, doing it very slowly, just open the bag, okay? On top of that, they were also chatting, and, you know, they turned the flashlight on their phone. It's just, don't be that guy or girl in the cinema that does that, you know, it just makes it a whole lot more annoying. And like I said, this is a quiet ass movie. Don't do it. But now that I've got my complaints out the way, let's talk about the film itself. So if you've seen the first one, this continues directly onwards. You know, there's no like missing ground. There's no like gap between the days. It's like the same day, it continues on. But the film does start with a flashback sequence, which if you saw the trailer, you knew there was a flashback sequence, and that flashback is to day one. I won't talk more about that, but the flashback sequence was really cool. It was nice to see a bit of backstory, you know, where it all started, and that was fantastic to see. And in this movie, you certainly see more of the aliens themselves. Obviously, you did get a fair view of them in the end of the first Quiet Place. You really see what they're about. But this, you see a lot of the alien, and you see, you know, a fair few of them. You know, there's quite a lot in this movie. And I like that. The design for these aliens is very cool, even though it can seem a little bit, you know, like it's something we've seen before. It can feel a little bit familiar, but it does sort of remind me of like a crossover of like Clickers from the Last of Us game, and then like Venom, and then if you ever watch Primeval, I think there were things in there called Predators. It kind of reminds me of like all those three things put together. So yeah, the aliens were once again very, very creepy and very well designed. And like I said, obviously the story continues and it does move on quick. You know, as you know, Cillian Murphy is in this movie, and you meet him, you know, pretty soon, and he was a really good character in this movie, as was everyone returning from the prior film. I think Cillian was, you know, pivotal and needed in this movie after, obviously, the events of the first film. You needed that sort of character again, and, you know, there was a gap to be filled there, and I think he filled it well. It kind of felt like that's what his purpose was in a sense, but it did work. And you know, the story does go unexpected ways. It goes ways I didn't think it was going to go. You know, it's kind of hard to predict where this movie's going to end up. Obviously, I keep mentioning the trailer, you see bits of it and you sort of, you know, hypothesize if it's going to end up here or here, but you know, you don't really have a rough idea, like a roadmap of how it's going to get there, and it certainly takes some twists and turns. Now, of course, the question is it as good as the first movie? It is quite different in a sense. You know, I think the first movie had quite a fair bit of downtime, so that when you got to the dramatic action, you know, bits, it did feel like a whole lot was at stake. It felt like, you know, this is really the big deal. Whereas in the second movie, there's not a whole lot of downtime, and it just sort of feels like there's a continuous pressure. You know, there's always something at stake. It's maybe not as high stakes as the events of the first film, but there's always something going on. There's always like someone in danger, or there's always a risk going on. It doesn't really feel like there's any calm in this movie. You know, obviously they wanted to change it up for the second film. They wanted to, you know, up the action, up the intensity. And I think it did make sense for the story, you know, the story that was being told. It was that sort of thing where things were always going to be on edge, at risk, and you know, from the moment go, you know, things are just sort of, you know, full throttle. You get little bits of downtime, but I would have liked a bit more, you know, just a bit more. Let's take a breath here, because it is a bit sort of full on, and it doesn't feel like you get a whole lot of personal time with the characters. But you know, I guess they're basing it on the fact that we got that in the first film, and that's the thing, this is so seamless the way it continues that, you know, this is the sort of thing you could easily binge, you know, and as they are kind of short movies, both of them, you could just sort of watch 1 and 2 back to back, and you're actually at about 3 hours, you know, maybe just under. So you know, it would work in that sense. But of course, the movies being short, you wonder, is that an artistic effect, or is that done for the sake of, you know, setting up sequels? Because they have actually already announced that, you know, they're going to start filming the third film in like 2023, which to me is kind of crazy in in terms of the fact that this movie's like only just been released in the UK and they're saying, yeah, by the way, we're going to start making, the third film soon. It's just a bit like, well, come on, like, there's no like anticipation anymore. It's not like you watch this movie and you go, oh, I hope they're going to make another one, or you're unsure if they're gonna. But this film did follow a similar formula in terms of it kind of left it on a cliffhangery sort of thing where there's it doesn't close the book. It leaves it open. There's definitely more to explore here, and there's more stories to be told with these characters. Regardless, I'm not hating on the business model for this. It does work actually, them being shorter, and I think with horrors in particular, the movie is better when it's shorter because there's only so much you can keep tension going for an extremely long time unless it's, very well written. But, I think the short formula, it works here. I like it. It's nice, an hour and a half movie. It's not very common these days, but, a movie doesn't have to be long. Obviously, I like a longer movie, but it doesn't have to be long, and it works here. Which I've said about 3 times. It works. Obviously, if I'm judging it compared to the first, which is better, I don't know, it's still raw. I saw this like a couple hours ago at the time of recording. Maybe I prefer the formula of the first, like I said, where it's more downtime, more confined characters, because obviously you've only really got like 4 or 5 characters in that movie overall. You just got the family. And I did kind of like that about the first film. You stick with your group and you get very attached to them and you care a lot. And then, when things go tits up, it's really, high stakes. This was a bit more open, more characters, more locations, more monsters. It just seemed to up the ante. But it's nice, they mixed it up a bit, they added some spices, some variety, and that worked for me. It was nice that it was different. Spoiler time. So just a few little spoilers if you've seen the movie or you don't really care about the spoilers. Let's got a few talking points here. Obviously, the intro is really cool. It's the flashback sequence. You get to see how the aliens arrived, and it's like a comet just coming down, which is pretty wild because you do wonder. I mean, I guess it makes the most sense. A spaceship wouldn't have worked because they're not the sort of creatures that would operate a spaceship. They just attack things. They're just crazy. But I did like the way the film started in terms of linking directly to the start of the first film. Like the pharmacy, the street. I remember the very first shot from A Quiet Place Part 1 was the traffic lights on the ground. And the very first shot of A Quiet Place Part 2 is the traffic light, just still up, flashing, all that crap. So that's cool. It's just these nice little bits. They showed the rocket ship that the son was holding in the first film, the son that got sadly killed by one of the monsters. So yeah, I did like those little links to the first movie, and the intro itself was just really cool. It was a really nice way to start the movie. That's how I thought they would start it, by doing that, and it worked very well. So I dug it. I was kind of hoping we'd see a little bit more, but I suppose there's only so much they needed to tell in that flashback sequence. It's just like, okay, this is how it started. Now we'll take you back, continue our story. Obviously, the characters as well, they split up in this movie. You kind of have 2 groups in the end. You've got Killian and the deaf daughter, and then you've got the mum, the baby, and then the son. Sorry, I'm terrible with the names here. But, they don't actually mention names a whole lot in this movie. I'm pretty sure in this movie you actually find out what the dad was called. The dad's called Lee. And if I'm not mistaken, that was never clarified in the first movie. The cast was probably just called Mum, Dad, Son, Son 2, Daughter, But yeah, the characters split up. They kind of go on their separate ways. Killian and the daughter have a crazy adventure. I found their side of the story more interesting than Emily Blunt's side of the story. I don't know her character's name. I don't know if anyone does. But I found their side of the story more interesting than hers. It was just a little more exciting. The fact they were moving about and potentially finding an island where they could get away. Because you always wondered, like, actually, island's not a bad idea. It kind of applies to everything. Like zombies, they can't swim. Can the monsters swim? It turns out they can't. They just drown. So yeah, that's their weakness. If you could that'd be a good way to kill them, possibly. If you just blew an air horn and just made them dive at you, and then, I don't know, they just dive in the water and die. But, maybe they'll clarify that in the third film. Maybe that'll be the grand scheme. And yeah, the ending, it's kind of a very similar ending to the first one, where they're just sort of setting it up for another one. Everyone survives, which was nice. I didn't really want to lose any characters in this one, even though it possibly might have added a bit of, drama to it. Killian's alive. I thought he was going to die at one point, but he's still with us, so I'm kind of curious to see where they go next. I'm wondering if maybe in the third movie, if they'll show Killian's perspective of the start, of day one of when the aliens came. But, we'll see. 2 years is not really that long to wait, but I'm looking forward to it, to be fair. It's only just been announced. I read it on IMDb earlier, but I think it's a good idea. This is this franchise is something new. Fair play to John Krasinski. You know, he's done obviously acting a lot, but I think this is not much of his work has been directing and writing, and I think he wrote this and directed it. So he's done well. It's a really interesting franchise. It's nice to have something original, something new. It feels like, even though it is pulling ideas from other things, it definitely feels different and it works. And yeah, more. This is a good movie franchise. I want more. So overall, A Quiet Place Part 2. It's good. It's really good. It's got some scares. It's got a good story. The performances are really good. The music's really good. The monsters look really good. And it's kind of hard to predict where it's going to end up. Like I said, possibly not quite as good as the first, but I do need to think on it. You know, it's something I need to watch them both a couple more times and just sort of think it through, but it's certainly up there. It's a very worthy sequel. It does not ruin anything. It does a great job in continuing the story, and it leaves you wanting more. So in my book, that is a success. Thank you all very much for watching. I know it's been a little while since I've posted. It's been a bit dry out there, you know, not much in terms of TV, movies, games, and, you know, I kind of wanted a little break, you know, working as well, and then, you know, doing the YouTube, and, you know, the sun's coming out, so I actually want to go outside and stuff, you know. No more hibernation, I'm afraid. But, you know, the videos will be back regular, of course, because I do enjoy doing this, and I hope you guys enjoy watching. So yeah, thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, leave a comment if you've seen the movie, and you have any views on it. Yeah, I'll see all of you in the next one.